Ryan Ottley's back as Nick Spencer starts us down the road to the hunted. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is an irate review, the show where I go over a comic book, its story, its art, give you my impressions, and let you know whether it's something you need to go back to the comic book shop for or not. Make sure you subscribe to get more of these every single week. The book that I want to talk about right now is Amazing Spider-Man number 16 from Nick Spencer and Ryan Ottley, and overall this is going to be bringing us into the giant kind of event that Nick Spencer has planned for the springtime, which is the Hunted, dealing with Kraven and possibly some clones. But let's dive in and see what's going to be coming up. The seeds have been planted in Amazing Spider-Man for the last few months, and the road to the Hunted is about to begin in Amazing Spider-Man number 16. So we get the return of Ryan Ottley, as well as a short story by Raphael Albuquerque, which is going to kind of lead into this major event, which is going to have 10 issues spanning the next 3 months, telling the story of the Hunted. But let's get into the details and how this story came about. In the beginning of issue number 16, we actually see the introduction of Kraven, as well as his kind of concept. While somebody is trespassing on his property, his game preserve, he guts the guide of this wealthy individual before making him a hunter himself, which is an interesting perspective for Kraven. Then we go into his resurrection and the history story. We've got Kraven rising from the grave after the events of his death in a classic last hunt, Kraven's last hunt. In a classic Kraven's Last Hunt style, the return to the Savage Land, the hunt of his own children as he's trying to maintain a legacy for himself, and then the meticulous murder of the Animen of the High Evolutionary. And through the actual complete decimation of his population, the High Evolutionary just calls out into the world saying, please, no more, just show yourself and let me know what I can do. And what the High Evolutionary does to maintain the population of Animen that he's been creating is to build Kraven clones. 87 different clones, specifically like himself, creating the sons that he never had. And while that was a horror to his actual biological daughter, Kraven raised these young men, these boys, into the hunters that he always wanted them to be. It didn't take long due to the accelerated aging process included by the High Evolutionary, but before long he had 87 sons that were fully grown men that were sent out into the world to claim their trophy. And as Kraven worked tirelessly to reclaim his kingdom and create a brand new one, he sent word to his sons, his 87 sons, to come back and they would finally claim their part of his kingdom, only to find that all of his sons, save one, had been murdered at his own hand, or at least his clone son hand, who comes with a sack of skulls, dumps him out in front of him, claiming that they were not worthy of his father's love. And the tears start to flow down Kraven's face before we find out that he is super happy at this development. It's just like, you are truly Kraven the Hunter. You know, I've never felt so proud. It's time for us to drink. It's time for us to do things. And he's like, Father, I want you to go and claim your greatest trophy. I will hunt the spider with you and give him to you. And it's like, Kraven's like, no, man. It's been a lot that's going on. We've got to go do something else. And he takes a look at the African savannas and the poaching and the dangers that's been going on, the water buffaloes caught in the traps, the rhinos without horns, the dead elephants from the ivory poachers, and we get the idea that Nick Spencer is going down a very political route with some of these different things, and then the rich hunters that come to his plains for game like tigers and giraffes and gorillas. But beyond these poachers and guides, there are things that are outside of his control, things that Kraven's strength might not necessarily be able to handle. So he's approaching it with a very different kind of tact as he puts on a black tuxedo and is ready for some sort of organization that has been set up by Mr. Arcade. And we see the man that he saved at the beginning of the issue, this wealthy person that was out here hunting game on his properties. Instead of being dead, he's here and invited for the next great stage of Kraven's process. And there are millionaires, billionaires, wealthy industrialists, capitalists, corporatists that are out there, and Kraven is here to make them an offer. He's offering them the hunt of a lifetime. As the introduction of the Savage Six happens, the vicious vulture, the sadistic scorpion, the tarantula, the Stegron, the King Cobra, and of course the Rhino, who just recently made his appearance in the previous issues of Spider-Man. And the Grand Hunt is something that they will be taking place in. All these wealthy individuals will get the opportunity to hunt down various criminals. And this is where his son, his clone son, who killed his own brothers, is a very different different kind of individual. He's just like, I have no idea what you're doing. Like, these people came and take from our land. Why are you laughing with them and offering the opportunity to hunt a handful of petty criminals? They have committed sins against nature. And you get this philosophical argument that comes from Kraven that when people take on the avatar of an individual animal, they become a totem. They have to pay a heavy blood sacrifice. That is the way of the jungle. They might call themselves the beast, but they have never taken up the flesh. They have never shown the world what it takes to survive, to enhance the brutal and violent nature of these animals. They don't know what it is to be claimed by the wild. And that's when we actually see that the Savage Six aren't the only people that are in captivity at Kraven's compound. When we see a lot of other individuals in these giant cages, and you get a hint that something much bigger is going on. At that point in time, we dip over to Raphael Albuquerque, who is telling us the story of Doc Connor's son, Billy. Doc Connors is woken by his wife saying that Billy is no longer there. Billy is out on the streets trying to track down the individual that he's been texting with, his supposed friend, and we find that Spider-Man, Peter Parker, is currently sick. He's like down with the flu or something along those lines, and he hasn't been the same since the death of Ned Leeds, and it's really been causing a lot of stress. And while Mary Jane would love to do nothing but make out with her man crush, Peter Parker, it's just not going to be in the cards, as he's found kind of throwing up over the toilet bowl. And when we get back to Billy, he's at the club, he's trying to get in, he's trying to meet this friend that has called for him so many times. But when his lizard-like urges force him to rush through the various security people towards Becca, and she doesn't know him, and then all of a sudden his hat comes off and he's just a lizard boy standing amongst all these wealthy elitist individuals from New York City, it just causes chaos that just can't be contained. He gets thrown out of the building, he rushes out into the public, he gets shot at by police officers, and then finally netted by Taskmaster and Black Ant. They have finally made their lizard quota as they are going to head off into New York City and bring him to this brand new hunting grounds that has been developed by Kraven and Arcade. And what we see is that Spider-Man is trying to track them down. He realizes he's too late. He's a little bit behind the 8 ball simply because he doesn't have that strength. He's a bit sick right now, but a spider tracer lands on his body and a call out comes from Black Cat saying that she has been captured. She knows where the lizard's son is, but everything is going to take a lot of help from Spider-Man. And that's where we're going to end issue number 16 and the introduction to the entire Hunted storyline. We've been getting hints over these last few issues where Kraven and Arcade have been working on some sort of deal that would allow them to carry out this master plan, and now we actually see it in action. The High Evolutionary's appearance is kind of weird, but it helps explain a few things regarding the cloning technology and how he ends up with a son that is himself, if not his better. And then we have the actual concoction, the construction of this great cascading game of hunting that Kraven is going to unleash onto the societal elites of the world. But like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a political play by Nick Spencer, and the one thing that we're going to see is most likely this plot is going to twist, because if you're going to enrapture or encapsulate the entirety of New York City, possibly just Manhattan itself, and turn it into a hunting ground for the variety of criminals and corporate elitists that are going to be taking place in this, people that have the kind of cash necessary to conduct a killing game in the middle of society, that is going to be a really interesting take, but it seems a touch contrived, a little bit too much Running Man for me. The one interesting thing that I want to see is how this develops. I really love Ottley's art. I think that his portrayal of Kraven and the rest of the Savannah, everything about it is fantastic. He's a real welcome addition to the entire series, and I sometimes wish that he was doing a bit more. And then Raphael Albuquerque's secondary story about Billy and the Lizard, between the two, this is a really titanic issue with a lot of great visuals that are really representing the characters well. I think The Hunted is going to be an interesting storyline, but with 10 different issues coming over the next 3 months, it might be a bit too much for a lot of people to handle, and some people might get fatigued as we work our way into War of the Realms as well. But I want to know what you guys think, so hit me up in the comments down below, and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.